All right, we're back in Studio K with Mark Mallman. How are you feeling coming off that performance?
I feel great. I love this. I've so much warmth and memories in this very studio from the very beginning of my career. It's just really exciting to be here, and I actually mean it.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because you were telling me the first time you came here was
98.
98.
98.
Yeah. But you haven't been here in 10
I haven't
or
been here
15
since
years?
Double Silhouette, I think, which is, I don't really know. Maybe 2010, 2013. I don't know.
Sweet. We're glad to have you back.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you want to tell us about those songs we just heard?
We did 2 songs from my new record, Magic Time, which is sort of like a monsters horror theme. I'm refraining from saying goth, but it's a little in there. Record, for me, it's a theme record. It's definitely post-punk and goth influence for me. And you can hear it probably in the first 2 songs we did. And the second was a song from 2004 called True Love.
And speaking of monsters and ghosts, so I read on your Spotify description that you've had some experiences with haunted hotels. I was kind of curious what you could tell us about that and how that sort of inspired your recent
absolutely.
music.
It's a hobby of mine to visit haunted hotels. I started it maybe 6 years ago. Aaron and I were on tour long time ago, and it was the only time we got to this hotel, and we were playing this place called the Hotel Monte Vista in Flagstaff, Arizona, and they give you a room. We walked into the room, and Aaron said, "I'm not staying here." And he's not like that, because he's a punk guy. He sleeps on couches and anywhere he can, and he would not sleep there. So we stayed with our friend Victory at his condo, and it wasn't until I started touring and staying in haunted hotels years later, 12 years later, when I read on a website that hotel is haunted.
Whoa.
It's haunted by a crying child in the hallway who's wet from swimming. And
That's intense.
I know it wasn't in the room that we walked in, but Aaron has a spidey sense, I guess, because I didn't feel it, but he knew.
Have you had any paranormal experiences personally? Did you ever see any ghosts in these haunted hotels?
Well, I think one of the things when I was look, this was record number 12 for me, and I've written music for TV shows and jingles and movie trailers. All my whole career has been writing, songwriting, right? And so I was like, how am I going to keep this interesting? Because I would sit down, I'd write a song. I'm like, I already wrote a song like that. And for me, songwriting is the whole core of, it's my essence. It's my life's work. And so I was like, I better pick a theme, and I had just gotten off tour with Vision Video. I was filling in for them on bass. So we were playing the Troubadour and playing all these big rooms as a goth band, And I was like, I'm going to explore this because I grew up on this kind of music and I love horror. And so I was like, and I found there's a lot of metaphors in our American folk of what horror might be, which is, person's attempt to rationalize something that science has yet to figure out. And so I picked that theme, and I found that in the music business there's monsters, and there's music business there's ghosts, and there's vampires, and all the metaphors were there. And then it just opened the door for me lyrically to be like, all right, I'm making a horror movie album, and that's what I made. So that's my way of avoiding your question.
Sweet.
Because the more I talk about the paranormal, the more I draw it to me. And I'm running from it my whole life. My whole life.
Yeah.
My
That's
whole
smart.
life.
Yeah. So you said you were into some goth music early on. And I had some questions about, so early in your career, you did some work with Davey Von Bohlen from the Promise Ring and Captain Jazz. So I was kind of curious what sort of music you were into in your teenage years.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, Davey and I grew up together in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And he was listening to a lot of Husker Du and cooler stuff than me. I grew up on the classic rock station that my dad had on, and I discovered, but then you had to dig more and it was hard because you had to spend money on stuff you didn't know if it was any good. So our radio station, college radio station, we couldn't get it in where we lived. So we just kind of had Davey was really into the punk scene, and we would talk about songwriting all the time. And then I moved up here. But then one day he called me, he said, "Hey, I started a band." I was like, "Oh, that's so great." We had practiced, a little band called Thruster, but it was nothing. And then he said, "I joined a band called Captain Jazz." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And he sent me a tape. I still have it. It's just a little cassette tape, handwritten Captain Jazz. It's a board mix from before before the compilation, the original version of that record. And they started the Promise Ring, and we would tour a lot with them, play a lot shows with them. And then that whole story happened. And then I came up here, and I became my story. And I just visited Scott, the bassist, when he came up with Goo Goo Dolls a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about everybody. It's cool. There's a lot of musicians drawing towards each other, when you're young.
Yeah. For sure.
But when I first heard that cassette, and I also have a board mix of Nothing Feels Good at home too, and I love that record. But when I heard the Captain Jazz stuff, I'd never heard anything like it in my life. I didn't know what to make of it. People still don't know what to make of it,
For sure.
But it's a truly groundbreaking album.
And how did you first get involved in the Minneapolis music scene? When you
I
came
moved up here to go to MCAD.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just focused on songwriting, and then art school, and I was writing songs. And then I started playing here live. I joined a band, and then I put out my first solo record in '98. And then that took off, so I had to quit the band I was in, which was fine with me because it was just whatever. But then I started touring the United States, and we toured for a good 10 years and played everywhere with a lot of different people. And then I started writing for TV, and then that's the last 12 years.
Yeah, that segues into my next question, is how did you end up creating a song for the Rick and Morty soundtrack? I know a lot of people here are big fans.
I'm really, that's a really weird story for me, and it's in my next book, but Ryan Elder is from here, the composer for Rick and Morty.
Okay.
He's from here, and he's a really close friend of mine for a long time. And when every so often he calls some people and says, hey, let's work on it. And he knew I was a composer, and I go to LA sometimes, and, he knew I was in the business. So he called me one day, and he's like, hey, I got this song, and it's about flowers, and it's for this episode of Rick and Morty. I knew nothing about the episode. And but he's like, would you write the lyrics and do some production? And he had asked Tennis, and I think Kishi Bashi, somebody else on that season. Mm-hmm. And I was like, cool, man. So I did it. And, at that, I'm like, as a composer for TV, you're writing all kinds of stuff all the time. You don't think about it. But I knew I was such a huge fan of Rick and Morty and his composition style on that show. I knew like this is going to be a real honor. And then I saw the episode, and that episode is pretty classic. It's called Planetina, and mm-hmm. I'm just so proud of that song, and it's really cool. It's one of the, you do stuff, and a lot of times I've written for a lot of TV shows, but when you get to a TV show that you really love at that time, it's pretty awesome. It's such a cool feeling.
Yeah, that's sweet. Next I was wondering if you could kind of tell us about your marathon performances that you've done. I'm especially curious about this last one. Yeah. Because you were performing while you were asleep. Yeah.
In 1999, I was in a bar in the basement of the Turf Club, and this band was playing, and they're pretty boring. And everyone was talking over them. And I thought, that's really interesting, like music as wallpaper, So I said to the bartender, I was like, can I just come down and like play? And he's like, yeah. And so then my friend said, what's the point of just playing when nobody's listening? I said, well, that's kind of what I wanted to explore. And he's like, you should play longer. And I thought about it, and I was like, I wonder what would happen if I started to hallucinate like from sleeplessness. So we did 26 hours, and it didn't happen. So then in 2004, we did it again, and we did 52 hours straight. And I didn't do any substances, no caffeine on that one still. And just I wanted to get to that point where I could see what is underneath our conscious mind mm-hmm. in the musical realm, especially someone for me who grew up playing piano at 3, like what exists in the subconscious. And then in 2010, we did it. I sang for 78 hours straight with 100 musicians backing me up, changing every hour. And by the last 10 hours, I don't remember it. I've seen videos of it. And I thought I'd be like crazy and weird, but you can't even tell. But I don't remember it at all. And so then I was like, okay, we did it. And then I was in LA. I was working on a horror movie for Lionsgate, and my friend calls me and says, I got this van, and what can we do with it? And he owns a tech company. And I thought, and he had this thing called the Emotive EPOC, and what that is a USB mind controller. I don't know if you're familiar with mind control, but it's something if you're autistic and you want to control your wheelchair, you wear these EEGs on your head, and then you train it like you would train a mouse. Left is this type of thinking, stressful, right? And you can control the mouse, you can control the computer. So I hired someone in a programmer in Georgia. He ended up working for Moog, but at that time he was at the UGA, and I asked him, "Can you write a program to work this with Ableton so that I can go to sleep, put the EEG MIDI controller on, and sort of my brain will be playing?" Because the idea was we're going to travel across the country in this van, and how do I keep playing music when I go to sleep? So we had this thing on. I had a heart rate monitor that ran into Ableton, and we live streamed it via cellular networks in 2012, which was pretty interesting. I've got a full documentary about it, but I just haven't released it. So that was called Marathon 4. We had like 16 cameras wired to the van. It was a lot of work. It was definitely the hardest of the 4 marathons. And then I was like, I don't know what else to do. We had talked about going to Antarctica. We had talked about doing some other stuff. But then I got busy with composing, and now I'm 52. I'm just not interested. That's a long story.
Yeah, that's crazy. I just never heard of that technology until I was doing some research for this interview.
It's really great.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, I'm so not freaked out. I'm so surprised that in 2013 people aren't doing it. If the emotive EPOC is like maybe $400. Controlling the mouse with your thoughts is so incredibly weird.
Yeah,
and you can do it. Like it's so easy now. The technology is so easy. I just can't believe that people can do it. I'm glad that it doesn't go reverse yet, but it's pretty awesome technology that I don't know why. I mean, you can play music by thinking. Mm-hmm. You think this way and it goes up the keyboard, think this way and it goes down the keyboard. And it's been that way for 12, 15 years, but nobody does it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. All right, yeah, in these last couple of minutes here, I was wondering if you could kind of run us just through your basic songwriting process.
Yeah. When I'm writing for, let's say, a TV show, or I don't really score that much for picture, but if someone says, they'll tell me, like, we need music for someone being chased through the woods by a killer in a horror movie, and I'll be like, okay, so you mean like 90s industrial music or something? Or for like General Hospital, they wanted me to write a lot of 90s trip hop, like ambient sort of Dido sounding stuff. I don't know why. I guess the demographic of it is people who like 90s music, but whatever. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm writing from my heart for myself, I'm just journaling my real life in a coded way, so people don't really know what my songs are. They sound like retro kind of 80s rock, but like you might not know. I have this song called If We Only Kept Getting Young, and nobody would really know. But my brother called me one day. He's like, if we only kept getting young, is like, that's when you were sitting, that's about mom in the hospital. I'm like, yeah, that song's about me holding mom's hand in the hospital. But you wouldn't be able to tell. My songs are very coded because I'm Cancer, right? I'm super protective of myself. Mm-hmm. So a lot of songs are ultra coded, and it's to protect myself because you don't know who's going to listen to a song,
Yeah.
But my songwriting process is very much listen, then play. I feel like in the creative process, it's our only connection to the void, to the other side, to the intangible realms beyond, the physical nature of matter and stuff. So I don't want to say spiritual, but I do just listen until I hear a melody, and then I'll play it. I don't just play, because I find that when I do that, it's crap. Mm-hmm. And then when I listen, it's less crap.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweet. One of the last questions here, we like to ask everyone who comes in, if you can play a dream bill, it's going to be Mark Mallman and like 3 other artists of your choice, dead or alive, broken up bands, still together. What is that bill going to look like? Where is it going to be at?
Well, I feel like one thing that as your musician in the city you live in, you do play your dream bill a lot because you're playing with your friends, and music is a human experience. And a lot of time we're I don't want to say brainwashed, but capitalism has sort of oppressed us into thinking that these people we don't know should have a presence in our lives. So I try not to project too much into celebrity or into people that don't, like, why should I care more about Ian Curtis, who's the singer of my favorite band, Joy Division, than I do my brother? I don't. I care about my brother, but I would play with Joy Division. I would play with Magazine, which is Howard Devoto, who started the Buzzcocks, and he started Magazine. It's a post-punk. And then I would play with Penguin Cafe Orchestra, probably. And then Eno would moderate it. But honestly, I've played with a lot of the bands that I really love. And I know a lot of I played piano for Patti Smith. You know, I'm lucky that I have gotten, when I talk to people, sometimes I say, younger people, I'll say, you will get to do a version of your dream, a version of it, and be okay with that. You know, don't let success bias think that you're going to be a star, because you won't. Nobody is. Nobody is a star. And that's a bad reason to do music.
For sure. All right, then just final question in here is, what shows do you have coming up, or any other recordings coming out soon, or just announcements?
I just finished a whole album cycle, so I'm like done. I'm done until spring, unless First Ave calls or somebody calls, wants me to do a tour or something like that. But for now, I'm just like, you know, writing on my book, running my TikTok, which takes every day, and kayaking, and just letting it settle. Because if I start writing right away, I'll just write the last album I just did. We don't need that.
Sure.
So probably in spring, we'll do another show here. And I'm going to probably move a little bit more orchestral.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've been kind of feeling that way.
That's exciting.
Yeah, like chamber poppy.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much for coming in again. It's been an honor.
Thanks for being the best, most tasteful radio station in town. Though you need more Britney Spears in your catalog here. In the Zone and Circus, at least okay. In the Zone and Circus.
I'll put in a word for you.
Thank you. I'll buy them for you and send them to you if you need them.
Perfect. All right, well, thanks again. You've been listening to Mark Mallman on Radio K, Real College Radio.
Yeah.